Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about how I prepared for my home birth. So when I first found out that I was pregnant, one of the first things that came to mind was, oh my goodness, this child is gonna have to come out at some point. And that realization really made me think about how that was going to happen. So I knew quite a few people that had done home births. I actually shouldn't say quite a few. I only knew a handful of people that did home births, and no one in my immediate family had done it, so it was a little bit out of kind of left field as far as what my family had done. But I just had this kind of inner conviction and that was the way that I wanted to do it, and so I started to do some research. I knew that if home birth was going to be an option at all, that it had to be a qualified professional that would be attending the birth, and to me that meant a certified nurse midwife or anything above that as far as qualification goes. I did find a certified nurse midwife in my area, and when I interviewed with her, she just made me feel at ease, and I knew that I was comfortable with her, both as being capable medically and also just that she really connected on a more emotional and spiritual level with me, and that was important to me as well. Once I knew that I would have a qualified provider, the rubber kind of hit the road, and I was like, okay, I need to decide whether I'm going to pursue the hospital route or if I'm going to pursue the home birth route. And at that point, I really felt like I needed to figure out what my why was. So there were different reasons really why a home birth felt right for me. I definitely don't think they're for everyone, and I wouldn't just say to someone, oh, you should have a home birth, because I don't know their situation. But for me, again, having a qualified provider was really important. And I also knew, well, I didn't know how my body would react to labor, but I had a feeling as far as how it would react in a hospital environment, because I'm really not very comfortable in hospitals. So in the case of labor, I really felt like my body would probably tense up and not dilate because I was just nervous in a hospital. So that made me feel like maybe my chances of a C-section might be more, and that was not something that I wanted to chance. Another reason why I really highly considered a home birth is because I didn't always think that the hospitals were doing things right. And I'm not going to play the blame game on this, because I think there's a lot that plays into that, but I did know that in America, the maternal and infant mortality rates were not where they should be for a developed country. So that was something that basically the hospital didn't give me any reassurance as far as how it would be as far as safety goes for me and my baby. So that was something that I also really played into when I was considering a home birth. I also felt that having a baby is a very personal and intimate experience, and I really didn't want people to be telling me that I had to have an IV or that I had to push in a certain position or that basically I had to do anything. I really wanted the freedom to let my body just do what it was made to do and not be told I had to do something specific. So once I had committed to doing a home birth, I knew that I needed to prepare myself well. I didn't want to say that I was going to have a home birth and then 3 contractions and not be prepared for what I was getting into and transfer to hospital. I definitely think there's a time and place for transfers, but I didn't want it to be because I was not prepared. Preparation for me meant a lot of research, and I did that in the form of reading some books, or kind of a lot of books. So I'll just tell you guys kind of the books that I personally liked and the ones that I didn't find helpful, so that hopefully if you take me up on reading these books or not reading them, you don't have to waste your time. So the first book that everyone tells you to read, What to Expect When You're Expecting. I did pretty much read through this, and I found it really unhelpful if you're going the natural route, just because all it says to do, when you have a question about something, or if something seems questionable to you, is to ask your doctor. And I think that's great, and I think that, yes, doctors went to school for a long time to learn what they learned, but I wanted to know for myself why I was doing a thing as I was and wasn't, not just to ask someone else. So I found this really unhelpful. It also is just kind of open-ended for every question that you ask, so you're not really going to get any meat out of this book. So as far as the best replacements for that book, I'd recommend Anna May's Guide to Childbirth. I really enjoyed this. If there's if you're going to read one book during your pregnancy, I'd recommend this one, just because it does talk a little bit about how fear-based birth is in America and how that can be different. There's a lot of quality information in here, and there's a lot of positive birth stories, and I definitely leaned on reading and kind of internalizing positive birth stories during my pregnancy. Yes, also learning about the not so fun things that can happen during pregnancy and birth. Another book I really enjoyed is Having a Baby Naturally, and this one I would say is the most comparable to your, like, what to expect when you're expecting, but it's from a more natural perspective. So this is also a really good resource. I don't think that it had too many birth stories in it, but it definitely has like nutrition, diet, exercise, emotional self-awareness, just all of that. It also touches on breastfeeding and life after baby, which was helpful to kind of prepare yourself for that. So this is really more of a comprehensive book that I really enjoyed as well. So the next book is The Birth Book, and I actually really enjoyed this one mostly for the history that it talked about as far as birth goes and why birth moved out of homes into hospitals when it did. So if you're curious about the history of birth especially, this is great. But I mean, that's mostly the first part of the book. The rest of the book does talk about just preparing yourself, and in the case of a C-section, for example, how to prepare yourself mentally for that, even if you're not planning for it. So that's just one case, but this is also a fairly comprehensive book as far as if you're wanting to go the natural route and if you're wanting to learn the reasons why behind the decisions that you may be making or deciding against. Another book that I decided to read was Natural Childbirth, The Bradley Way. And as far as like practical application and showing you how to do the things that it recommends, I think this is one of the best books out there. However, the positions and such that they recommend did not work for me at all during labor. It just didn't work. The Bradley method works great for a lot of people. For some reason, for me, it just was not for me. But if you want to learn the Bradley method, then this is a great book to do it. I know that they also have classes, so you could probably find classes in your area. I'm not a good example for the Bradley method, I guess, but this is one way that you can learn how to do that. A couple more books that I kind of more so skimmed through than read were Spiritual Midwifery. And this is actually another, like, I'd probably say this is my number 2 favorite, just because, again, it has really positive birth stories and it talks a lot about evidence-based findings that they had, and just, it's just a really solid book. If you want a book that's going to help you mentally prepare. Birthing from Within is another one that I skimmed through. This one is really great to address any kind of deeper fears that you might have. It also has really good positive birth stories in it. And it does also talk about how important your husband or partner's touch is during birth. And so if any of those things interest you, this is a good one. It is a little bit more new agey, so I kind of looked over some of that. But it was helpful for the most part. A couple books that I read that I found not as helpful. The first is the Nourishing Traditions book of baby and child care. This talks about pregnancy as well. I don't mean to knock the book, it's a great book. It was just so overwhelming for me as far as how much cod liver oil you should be eating, and just very it was just very almost unattainable as far as the type of lifestyle that I live. I like to be healthy, but that doesn't consume every waking moment. So this was just, it is a great resource, but it was too overwhelming for me, and I wouldn't recommend it unless you like really want to commit to amazing nutrition. Again, a good book, just not for me as far as application goes. This is my least favorite book that I read, and I really did read this one cover to cover. When I saw the reviews on it, there was one woman that had mentioned that it was very new agey, and I kind of rolled my eyes and I was like, okay, but if there's good information, like I can kind of read past that. It was so prevalent throughout the whole thing, so if you're not into that, it will be very distracting. Content-wise, it just was not that impressive. It was another one of those, it didn't really have a lot of fact-based information. It was kind of more like, if you feel this way, then do that. So I think that applies to a lot of things in motherhood, your intuition, but I wanted to learn about facts, not about my own intuition, which I already had. So again, this was not my favorite. Some people might like it, but not me. The last book is a somewhat controversial one just because of the content, but I did want to share it because I found it helpful personally. And it's the Vaccine Friendly Plan. I just found that the information in here was really solid. There was a lot of research. You're wanting a resource as far as how to navigate that kind of tough area. I think this could really be great. I've found it very helpful. So this is another one that I would recommend if you want to go the natural route, or if you have any questions at all whatsoever about vaccines. We did also take a birth course to prepare for birth, and we didn't go to hospital like most people do for their birth courses, just because we weren't giving birth there or weren't planning to. We took a course that was called Mama Natural, and it was recommended by her midwife, and we really did enjoy it. It was very thorough as far as any question you could really have about birth. And if you had any more questions, then she did also have a pretty full website of information. So that was just a really good way to prepare for a natural birth. And if you're also like considering between hospital or home, or really, honestly, I feel like it catered most people in hospital that were trying to advocate for themselves. So that's a really great tool as far as that goes. One thing that came with purchasing that course was affirmation cards. And I use these a lot. For example, this one says, I love being pregnant. I love and connect with my baby. My body is preparing to breastfeed my baby. I make the perfect decisions for my baby. Not only are these like really pretty, but they have really good content on them, and they also like have text on the back just to help kind of make that affirmation sink in. If you're going to use affirmations, I would definitely recommend using them before you go into labor, because when you are in labor, not much new information is going in, so you have to kind of have this already solidified in your mind. Also, as far as affirmations go, I personally use scripture. That was important to me, so I just wrote out cards. Those are upside down. I wrote out cards. So any other type of comfort to your affirmations during birth, definitely recite them beforehand, but those are also very helpful for during birth. As far as other things I did to prepare for labor and delivery, I did try to exercise quite a bit, at least up until around 25 weeks. And then I kind of lost motivation, but I did still, do things like walking and just trying to stay active in general. So although I kind of fell off the bandwagon with that one, I think it still helped that I was walking and such. I did also eat 6 dates a day for the last 4 weeks of my pregnancy. Most days I did. And I really do think that was helpful. Basically, there was research done that shows that eating those dates helps with less bleeding after birth as far as hemorrhaging goes. And it also helps with having shorter labors, which I think I could claim I had like a 6-hour labor. So I would definitely eat 6 dates a day for the last 4 weeks of my pregnancy again next time, although they were kind of hard to stomach some days. So that is something that you can like Google to find out more about, but it is some pretty solid research as far as what they found. They're not sure exactly what's in the dates that does it, but it does help. So that's a fairly easy way to try to have a shorter labor and to ensure that you're not going to have extra bleeding at the end. The only other thing that comes to mind as far as preparing for labor was drinking red raspberry leaf tea. And I really only drank it probably the last 4 weeks of my pregnancy. I was a little bit worried about starting contractions too early, but it really didn't seem to affect me. Like some people can actually start contracting and feel those contractions, but it didn't for me, and I drank probably 2 cups of it a day. I can't say that I felt like there was any direct correlation as far as it being helpful, but it didn't taste too horrible, and it was a way to at least kind of make myself relax during the day. So I guess that was helpful for that reason alone, but I don't know if I would depend on that for a next pregnancy. Otherwise, I really tried to give myself grace during my pregnancy. It can be so overwhelming, just all the different things that you have to be careful of, or that you could do or not do. And so I just tried to navigate that and not overwhelm myself, but also try to make good decisions for me and my baby. So try not to overwhelm yourself if you can. It can get that way. If you feel that way, just step away from it for a while. It'll be better for you and baby. So yeah, that's just kind of how I handled the overwhelming part of all the information. But I wish the very best for you and your pregnancy and birth, and hopefully this is a little bit helpful if you are looking to have a more natural birth.